Check, check, 1, 2. Here we are. All right, give me 2 seconds. I'm still figuring stuff out, guys. All right, so I do not know who is in here with me. Whoever it is, if it's anybody, if it's nobody, that is fine too. We will look back at this stream in a couple of years and probably laugh at these first couple. I will get the sound right. I will get the lighting right. This will get better, I promise you. But as if you're here, thank you so much for joining me on Nano Steel Sports Pod episode 2 live. We are here tonight to talk about, you know exactly what we're here to talk about, guys. We are going to talk about what we've been waiting for weeks. We have been waiting for the New York Jets to finally name the next head coach in their illustrious history. Okay, this will be the Jets' 7th head coach since the year 2000, and we are at a point where it has to be the right one. There's no time to make the wrong choice again, guys. Let's start. Obviously, we know Aaron Glenn is the choice. All right. As we know, he was in the building yesterday, and the move was to not let him leave. He did happen to get out of the building. That has come back to bite teams before. I know the Saints were still kind of pushing him pretty hard to potentially jump over and be their coach. He spent some time with the Saints a couple of years ago. They really like him, really respect him over there. But we got our guy, and that doesn't happen very much for the Jets. As we know, it's been a coaching search where a big portion of it was the fear that people weren't going to want to come to New York under the last circumstances with Woody Johnson overseeing everything and come take this job. They felt like it was the type of job where the owner might cut their legs out. And other than Rex Ryan, who was kind of really clamoring for the job over and over and over, where nobody really took him super serious, I don't think, thinking he had a shot at the job, where nobody else was kicking down Rex Ryan's door. So it was kind of Jets or nothing. We got Aaron Glenn, right? A former player. So, look, it doesn't matter who I wanted before. Obviously, Aaron Glenn wasn't my top choice, but he's here now and he's ours. And he picked us. And that's an incredible thing. All right. Now, what do we know about Aaron Glenn? We know that Aaron Glenn as a player for the Jets was incredible, right? He was drafted in the first round, 12th overall by the Jets out of Texas A&M. So he understands what being a Jet is. He understands what comes with being a Jet. He understands what comes with New York. And the cool thing about Aaron Glenn is Aaron Glenn was here in the Rich Kotite days where the Jets were 1-16. So he's seen us at our worst. And he lasted from 94 all the way to 2002. So he got a little taste of seeing New York and what it could be like as a thriving franchise as a Jet. And that was awesome. So I think the ability for him to be able to see where we are now is very similar to where they were in 94 when Aaron Glenn came on board. And where we dream of going is very similar to 2000 when the Jets came into the season with, let's be real, AFC title and potential Super Bowl hopes until Vinny tore his Achilles. And that sort of hampered us, very similar to the year before this with Aaron Rodgers. Now, 15-year pro. So that alone is going to generate him some respect and some clout from players in the locker room. Now, that's something the Jets haven't really done a lot of the last couple of years is players. Like the Jets have brought in these first-time coaches, but not only on top of being first-time coaches, they've had no playing experience, right? Robert Saleh, no playing experience. Obviously, we had Jeff Ulbrich as an interim guy. He spent a lot of time in the league, but a lot of their previous Rex Ryan, no time in the league. A lot of these guys were never able to kind of tap into that with a player where he can say, like, listen, I completely understand what you're going through. I've been there. I've been in your shoes. I've been in that seat. And that carries a lot of weight with players, the ability to be able to relate to your coach. And from what I've seen with these Jets players, a lot of them wanted Aaron Glenn. And I have to believe that that's part of it. And Aaron Glenn wasn't just a marginal player. Aaron Glenn was a very good player. He spent 1994 to 2002 with the Jets. And then they lost him to that expansion draft when the Texans came into the league, where, again, he was drafted in the first round, 3rd overall in that expansion draft. And the Jets lost a really good player. I remember being young and saying, like, damn, I really wish they could have hung on to Aaron Glenn. Now, what we know of Aaron Glenn as a player, again, very good, very fiery, very competitive, very hard-nosed type of player. And it seems like that's the type of coach he is too. And that's awesome because that is something the Jets haven't had. That's something that I think we thought we had with Coach Saleh, because Coach Saleh, as we've spoken about it before, he looked the part. He still looks the part. He looks the part to the point where he might actually be in line for the Jaguars head coaching job, which is absolutely incredible to me. If you've seen any Robert Saleh games over the last 4 or 5 years, to think that that guy is in line for another head coaching job, God bless him. I'm happy. Seems like a great individual, but as a head coach, he was terrible. He was terrible. He did everything wrong. Great coordinator, not fit for head coaching, and he might get a job again. He looked the part. But to see Aaron Glenn, who the same way, he's that same fiery player, fiery type coach. You have to believe because he's done it as a player and he's done it as a coach, he's going to bring it over to the head coaching too. All right. So, 17-year career. Okay. Pro Bowler, all pro. Amazing credentials as a player. Now, as a coach, he was a Jets personnel scout early. That's how he came back into the fold and made his move. He's got a really cool story, actually. He went from owning a bunch of businesses, working as sort of like a suit behind the scenes, where his wife said to him, like, are you really comfortable doing what you're doing? Are you really happy and fulfilled doing what you're doing? Because he said he would get so frustrated watching these Jets games that his wife was like, you got to coach. This is something that's in your blood. Football is something you love. And that's something that I can completely relate to. Because, I mean, if any of you know me, this is probably part of the reason that my microphone situation is what it is. But last weekend, I was away playing in the flag football national championships. So a bunch of former pros, a bunch of high-level college guys, we all still play. And I still do it because I just love it so much. It's in my blood. It's my passion. I can't never get enough of it. And that's what it seems like Aaron Glenn was like, to the point where his wife was like, Aaron, you got to get into coaching. So he comes on board as a Jets personnel scout. And from there, he ends up working his way to a DB coach for the Browns in 15-16, for the Saints 16-20. And then he becomes the Lions defensive coordinator from 21 to 25 and is a big part of that finally, that Lions building that finally seems like it's changed that culture. They had a losing culture, one of the only cultures that are sort of on par with the Jets when it comes to just misery over and over again. But Aaron Glenn was a big piece of that, right? Obviously, Coach Campbell gets a lot of the credit, and Ben Johnson's gotten a ton of the credit for the offense. But let's be real. We can't really, I myself can't take serious the last couple of weeks with that Lions defense because of 11 starters that were one of the top ranked defenses in the league through like 10 weeks. Every week it seemed like an important starter went down. And it's tough to judge the team when you're getting practice squad guys on and you're getting your regulars out and you just couldn't get guys back. So did the Lions look great the last 5 or so weeks and look real bad in the playoffs last week? No, they look bad. Aaron Glenn's defense didn't look great, but I have to attribute that to not really being Aaron Glenn's defense. These aren't the guys he worked with that he grew in this defense over the last couple of years to kind of grow. He's had, players that we didn't expect a lot of from that ended up turning out to be big time players in that defense. He's gotten the most out of them. And that is super important. Okay. That's a super important thing for a coach to be able to do, to take okay players and turn them into what amounted to stars. They were the number 1 seed most of the year. So, okay. Now, where am I at with the whole Aaron Glenn thing? As you know, we've talked about this before. Obviously, he wasn't my number 1 choice, but that was not an Aaron Glenn thing. I was of the belief that the Jets had to go with an experienced winner. And this year, they were out there. There were guys that fit that bill out there on the market to be had. Obviously, I think my first guy was Mike Vrabel, and I think that was a lot of our first guys. He seemed to fit everything the Jets need going forward. He's turned a program around before. He's fiery. He's competitive. He holds guys accountable. He kind of walks the walk. He was a player in the league. But as soon as the Gerard Mayo thing happened in New England, I think we knew that, that this probably wasn't going to happen for us. He's New England through and through. He's won championships there.
he made it sort of abundantly clear as soon as that job became open that that was probably going to be where he landed. So we lost Mike Vrabel. Next for me, I'm telling you, I thought it was an incredible coaching cycle simply because there were so many guys that are proven winners that have Super Bowl rings that sort of check a lot of the boxes that you want your next Jets coach to check, right? I even like Brian Flores. Like I thought, so let's pull it back for a second. My order was last minute when Mike McCarthy became available, he became my number one. I love his history with the quarterback. They've won a Super Bowl together. I love that he won 12 games consistently with Dallas in all the years that he had a healthy quarterback. Obviously, this year he did not. Dak Prescott went down for the majority of the year. And to be honest, they didn't go very far. But he got a whole lot out of Cooper Rush, who's an average to below average NFL starter. You know what I mean? He's average on his best day, and Mike McCarthy made him look serviceable. So I thought for me, that was a big deal. We need a guy who knows exactly what he's doing. There was no time for me to be messing around with these first-time head coaches, and that's where I was. So in my head, it was McCarthy won after Vrabel became unavailable. It was, I love John Gruden. I know he's got the baggage. I know with John Gruden was going to come critique and people probably upset for a couple of weeks. But John Gruden is an offensive mastermind, and he's shown me that he can win. And he's shown me that he'll get on guys if they don't perform. And a team like the Jets that have so much talent on paper, they are right there with the most talented teams in the league. But they do things every week that that just don't align with a successful franchise. And there are things that will be fixed with accountability and tough coaching. And as we spoke about last time, I think tough coaching is okay, even in this league, provided you tough coach with the right intentions. So John Gruden was my number two. I love the idea of Pete Carroll coming back. I've seen Pete Carroll, obviously he started here with us in the beginning of his career, and it did not go well. It did not go well. But since then, he's put in 25 great, successful years where he flipped the culture in a franchise. And he got the most out of a quarterback and young players. He's done it multiple times. First Russ, then Geno Smith. And I thought, now would be a great time for that. I always thought bring Aaron back, get a young rookie in the fold, and let a guy like Pete Carroll kind of teach and nurture, turn him into the quarterback of your future. Okay. But the Pete Carroll thing didn't happen. And then Brian Flores, I liked a lot. And Brian Flores, for the same reasons, the fact that he's holding guys accountable, that he's taking it to his players, that he demands a lot out of guys. See, that to me is a good thing. I like that. That's what I need with my young team who make excuses, who take silly penalties, who so undisciplined out there, who don't come out of the locker room ready. I wanted a guy like a Flores, and I thought he might get a shot. A scary thing to me is none of those guys even made it into the building. So as many guys as the Jets did interview for this job, and it seemed like 1,000 over the last week, you kept hearing this guy got a shot. This guy got a shot. This Pop Warner coach got a shot. This 4-8 head coach from the University of Maryland got a shot. 1-8 in conference out of Maryland. And the Jets brought him into the building and left Mike McCarthy and Pete Carroll and John Gruden and Brian Flores didn't make it into the building. So this was worrisome for me. But a beautiful thing over the last 2 weeks has happened, and it's that Aaron Glenn has grown on me. He has grown on me a lot. The more I started to read and the more I started to kind of dive into his career and see what other people thought of him who are around him daily. And I want to warm into the idea. I thought if it had to be a first-time head coach, this was the one, if it had to be somebody. Now, I get it. The first-time head coach, coordinator, especially on the defensive side of the ball with the Jets, is going to give us PTSD. We have seen it over and over and over again where this guy comes in and fails. And then 3 years later, we fire him and we start from scratch. I said it earlier, 7 head coaches since 2000. 6 of them have been first-time defensive coordinator type coaches, and it has not worked for us. So again, I'm the same as you guys. To me, it's fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 7 times, shame on me. It's my fault. Like, I'd much rather go back to the well in 3 years saying we took a shot with a Super Bowl winning coach and he just didn't have it anymore. It's just the game passed him, or we made mistakes, or than I would in 3 years saying we took a shot on a guy who we never saw head coach before over 3 guys with Super Bowl rings, and it was a failure. So that's the risk you run when you do the same thing over and over. And that's what the Jets did. But like I said, I have warmed to the idea of Aaron Glenn the last couple of weeks, and it's because some of the reasons we're going to talk about, right? Now, what is it? What makes Aaron Glenn different to me than the rest of these guys? It's simple. Aaron Glenn's one of us. Aaron Glenn is a Jet. Aaron Glenn's been through the struggles like we talked about a bit earlier. 8 years in Jets green. Understands what comes with the media, what comes with playing in New York City, what comes with losing in New York City. And the beautiful thing, what comes with turning around the franchise and winning in New York City. Because again, he was here with that 2000 team that went 12-4. So he's gotten to feel a buzz around New York City about playoff football and what this place could be if you fulfill that potential, or you outperform what is expected of you. I think right now, I don't think people expect more than like a 9-8 season out of the Jets next year, maybe 10-7 best, right? And we have so many unanswered questions still. Who's going to be the GM? Who's going to be our quarterback? And we'll touch on that in a bit. But there's so many unanswered questions that I don't think he comes in, with a team that he feels like he has to win a Super Bowl with. But he has that roster that if everything does fall into place, he could do what other Jets coaches have done in their first year. Rex Ryan came in his first year winning, right? Won playoff games. Todd Bowles came in his first year. Remember, he had a good first year. And we didn't know. We thought we might have found something with Todd Bowles, and we were excited about that. And that ended up turning out bad. Todd Bowles went on to win a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. But here with us, it just never seems to work. But again, he's one of us. So I feel good about that. All right. What I want to do is really explore the pros and the cons of the Aaron Glenn signing. And there's a couple of cool pros that I think, as a Jets fan, makes me feel a little better on top of the ones we've spoken. Okay. It's the ones we've spoken about are simple. Fiery playing and coaching style. That really should serve a team that looked dead and come out of the locker room gutless so many times that would just have other teams impose their will on them. Run down your throat. No rushing game for us. Our lines are getting sort of manhandled. That having a fiery, competitive coach that's going to get in your ass and talk and get guys jacked up that's helpful. That's going to be helpful for the Jets. So that's a big pro. All right. What else do I like about this? I like a lot that the Jets' young stars seemingly were lobbying for Aaron Glenn over the last week or two on social media. You saw Quinnen Williams multiple times put out posts sort of implying that Aaron Glenn would be his choice. And that's great. Quinnen Williams has the potential to be a top 3 defensive lineman in the league. He's paid like one. He's been an all-pro before. Seemed to take a bit of a step back this year, but everybody did. So that's great. Sauce Gardner, who seemed to find his footing in the second half of the year. A little tough for him coming into the year. He had a tough couple of weeks by his standards. He's a first-team All-Pro caliber player, and he was getting beat up a little bit the first couple of weeks of the year by players on the field and in the media, which is new to him, and it's weird. It's not something he's had to deal with before. But he seemed to be really on board with the opportunity to get Aaron Glenn in the building. And today I saw Malachi Corley, who we really had high hopes for coming into the year, and he turned out to be very underwhelming and not really contribute much after he made that big mistake, kind of dropping the ball early. It looked like the Jets coaches were like, listen, we'll get to this guy when we get to this guy. But Malachi Corley said publicly, almost gave an endorsement to Aaron Glenn. So the fact that the players in the building that you need to re-buy in, especially young guys who've never seen success in the league, who it's easy to kind of lose, the fact that they're bought in and they see a coach that they like and the Jets brass brought this guy in and this guy's been in their shoes before, I think that's promising. I do. I think that's a big plus for the Jets, having a guy like that and having the young players on his side. I think that's great. What else? Former Jets are hyped about the Aaron Glenn signing, and that's great, right? I love the fact that former Jets are coming out and in support of Aaron Glenn, right? We've seen some of his counterparts in the defensive backfield. I've heard Ray Mickens. I've heard a couple of other Jets from when he was on the team where they actually, I heard it went to the point where those players were endorsing him to Woody Johnson, which is incredible. It's good to see that that former players who have a love for the organization are in the owner's ear, like, get this guy in the building. He's good for the culture. He's going to flip things here. This isn't too big for him. That's promising for Aaron Glenn, and that's promising for me. That I like a lot. So these are all good signs, okay? Last, you know what I liked a lot? I loved that old players, they're saying that like old players now are going to make it a point to get back to training camp, reintegrate themselves back into the franchise, which it hasn't always been like with the Jets. And you see this across town a lot. I've been doing a lot of comparisons between the way Jim Dolan has been the last 20 years with the Knicks, where we were all like, why are you so hands-on? Sit back, let your basketball guys make the decisions, and stop effing things up for the Knicks. And so many people for so many years felt like Jim Dolan was the reason the Knicks just perpetually failed. And I think a lot of people now start to get that feeling about Woody Johnson with the Jets. This guy just can't keep his hands off. You do not know football, Woody. You were born into a lot of money. You were blessed with a franchise because of the work of your parents or your family or your grandparents. And now, for whatever reason, something tells you that you know football. I'm sorry, man. That's not where we are. But that's what the Knicks dealt with for a long time and what the Jets are dealing with now. So the fact that the Knicks started to reintegrate these old players and Jim Dolan is sitting back, and now the Jets seem to be doing the same, where old players are excited about coming back. It just gives you a different feel. And this is a good thing. We need a culture changer in that head coaching office. And if Aaron Glenn is that guy and old players take pride in this and they want to come back and be part of this, that's promising to me. I like that very much. I think that's a big deal. I think the fact that players want to be back in the fold is something we haven't seen from the Jets in a long time. And the fact that that's a thing now is got me feeling good. All right. So there are our pros. Those are things that make me feel good about this hiring. But with the pros, obviously, come the cons. And thankfully, there's really only one big con I have with the Aaron Glenn signing, and it's something we've talked about, and it's something that everybody's talked about. And it's the same deal. It's the fact that he's a first-time head coach, right? So there's that unknown. We don't know how he's going to react to being the man, right? We watched Robert Saleh, who was the man as a defensive coordinator. He was excitable and he had players on his side and he was jacked up. And then he moved into that head coaching office. The spotlight was on him and he seemed to crumble. He coached one side of the ball, seemed very, very far away or distant from the offense and distant from the special teams. And he failed. He failed miserably. That's what you worry about with these first-time head coaches. So that's pretty much the only con I have. And the fact that there were so many guys that seemed to fill what the Jets need and they never got a shot. So that's something where in hindsight, we're going to look back at this in 2-3 years and say either A, these guys saw something in Aaron Glenn that warranted him being one of the only guys to get a shot in the building, or we're going to say it was more of the same and you left 3 Super Bowl winning coaches on the sidelines, never got him in the building, and failed again. And it just seems like this time has to happen. It has to happen at some point. The Jets will find that guy, and this does feel different to me, okay? So that's it for the cons, really. There's not very many. It's just the one, that unknown, that fear of the unknown. Is this head coaching job, is this head coaching spotlight in New York going to be too much for him? And we hope not, but We'll know, we won't know until it happens, right? So where does this leave us as a franchise? What does this mean? The signing of Aaron Glenn. It means that hiring a competent staff is vital, right? He is going to need high level, competent, willing assistants on this staff that can pick up for the things that he's never had to do and be able to sort of help him in this role. A lot of names are getting thrown around. A lot of good names are getting thrown around. A lot of names that I'm not really super excited about. But let's talk about the leaders in the clubhouse right now. First on offense, hang tight with me one sec. One sec. I'm getting some feedback on here. I just want to mess around with it or two. Okay. So, all right. I apologize, guys. I don't think the Wi-Fi was strong there. Hold on. Okay, so let's talk about where we're at now. So, first thing I heard that makes me feel good about this is when we're talking about where we go from here. Okay, the elephant in every Jets room right now boils down to what? Aaron Rodgers, and it's been that way for about 2 years now. And a couple of weeks ago, it looked kind of bleak. If you were an Aaron Rodgers supporter like myself, it almost looked like it was a foregone conclusion that we were going to lose him. And by losing him, by default, we're going to lose Davante. And then it's back to square one. It's where do we go for this quarterback? Is Jordan Travis ready? Is there anybody at the middle of the first round in this draft that you could pick to save your franchise? And it didn't look like it. But rumors coming out say that apparently Aaron Glenn is interested in bringing back Aaron Rodgers, as reported by Michael Kay, who's usually pretty much he's in the know in New York. He's one of those reporters that usually has his ear to the ground, and he's got some good connections. And he heard that Aaron Glenn is interested in bringing back Aaron Rodgers, and for me, I think that's a must now. I thought it was a must before. Why with a first-time defensive coach do I think it's a must? And that's because, like we said with Robert Saleh, who was very tapped into the defense, he wasn't super tapped into the offense. If you're a young coach just getting your feet underneath you as a head coach for the first time, the less you have to worry about, the better. And the fact that he might be able to lean upon a Mount Rushmore level 4-time MVP type quarterback rather than have to nurse a young quarterback along and teach him how to be a pro and hope that this isn't too big a moment for him. He's able to sort of focus on more of the things he needs to and sort of put his trust in Aaron Rodgers that, all right, the quarterback position should be taken care of, right? He knows that his quarterback is going to be in there, taking the job serious, doing the right thing, spreading that work ethic and those habits to the young guys. And that's just one less thing he has to worry about, which I think is promising for the Jets. So if you're an Aaron Rodgers supporter, I think at the end of today, you probably feel a little bit better about him coming back. Again, with that means you probably feel a little bit better about Davante Adams coming back. For someone like me who's been in that camp the whole time, that's awesome. I'm actually feeling good about that. That's something I'm happy about. All right. Back to the staff and just the importance of him and that supporting cast being able to kind of come together. It's really weird. The Jets did what the Jets do, and they hired backwards again. You did think they might get a general manager and then get their head coach like most, competent franchises do, but the Jets are the Jets. So they did do it backwards, and they did not sign their general manager first, though it seems like one of the top candidates is a guy that Aaron Glenn does have a history with. So you have to believe that potentially that would be the next guy to be the general manager with Aaron Glenn. And by default, they come in together and they work in unison. That's what you really want, a harmony and understanding between your head coach and your GM. So it looks like that still might be the case, but the way they got there is all cockeyed, like most of the things the Jets do. Now, to fill out the offensive side of the ball is going to be massive because, again, he's a defensive coach. And where the Jets struggled a ton last year, the defense wasn't fantastic. But hold on, let's see. We got somebody. Okay, cool. In the chat, Makashita, thank you so much for jumping on, man. Head coach and GM both directly reporting to Woody now. I don't think so. I think the fact that they brought on Aaron Glenn means that it's going to be Aaron Glenn's show. I do. But I do think that he will be working. I mean, at the end of the day, everybody always reports to the owner. It's like any other business. If the owner is not into what's going on, we saw it last year. But where they just cut Robert Saleh's legs out from underneath him. And in hindsight, it ended up being a bad decision. I didn't think Saleh was any good at his job. But to kind of ruffle, make the waters choppy in week 4 or 5, whenever it happened, just didn't seem like the move. So one thing, look, there's not very many great things about Woody. One thing I can say about him is he does give his staff time to kind of figure it out before he, makes his move. So Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, I mean, they were 4 or 5 years into this failure before he did make a move. So if we say anything about Woody, good, it's got to be that he gives his guys a chance. So I have to believe that this year, if his history, shows us anything, it's that hopefully he'll let these guys go in there. And if they're going to make mistakes, he'll let them make their mistakes. But, if it's a catastrophe, obviously at the end of the year, they'll have to answer to Woody and we'll see what happens. But if they seem competent and they seem like they're growing, Woody Johnson has shown, the capacity or the ability to let his guys kind of work their way through it or not. That's one thing we can say. He doesn't kind of kill them early. But now back to the offensive staff. So we're hearing a couple of names that we're familiar with, a couple of names probably we're not super familiar with. Today I heard the name Nick Caley for the first time. Or the last couple of days, I've been hearing the name Nick Caley, which is one that I'm not sure too many people are familiar with. He's currently the Rams passing game coordinator. He was formerly the Rams tight end coach, and he's been a tight end coach at multiple places. Now, Rams pass game coordinator is good, right? The Rams were the 10th ranked passing offense in the league last year. But you always have to worry with a team like that, how much of that is really the brainchild of a guy like Sean McVay overseeing everything, right? Now, the Rams are put together like you'd hope the Jets would be put together. The Rams theoretically have 2 number 1 receivers, right? They have Puka Nacua there, who just burst onto the scene last year. He's followed it up with a great year this year. And they have Cooper Kupp, who's shown a propensity to carry a team on his own, too. He's put up offensive player of the year type seasons before. And the Jets have the same. They have multiple grade A, 1A receiver type weapons, provided they bring Devontae back. You have Garrett, you have Devontae, you have Malachi Corley. So tons of weapons. And if you can utilize them properly, we watched the way the Rams running backs this year got off too. To the tune of, I think they have something like 29 or 31 touchdowns over the last 2 years. They're starting running back. So if you could use Breece Hall like that, that's a huge deal, right? So this stuff is promising, but again, not a household name, but he seems to be one of the leaders in the clubhouse right now. I've heard the name Mark Brunell. Mark Brunell, a lot of us are familiar with. He's had a successful playing career as the quarterback of the Jags, and now he's been coaching for some time. He's been the Lions quarterback coach as of late, right? So the thing is, again, that brings us to how much of the success falls back upon a Ben Johnson. So you have the same issue you sort of worry about at every level, right? You wonder how much of the success in Detroit came from Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson. You wonder about how much of the success in Detroit, again, with Mark Brunell being the Lions quarterback coach, how much of their offensive success comes from working with Ben Johnson. But Mark Brunell's a name that has been tossed around over the last 24 hours. So we'll see how that works, right? Another name we heard, which is pretty interesting, is the name Todd Haley. Now, Todd Haley, I have a personal connection with. from my time in Kansas City, he was my head coach. And what did I see with Todd Haley? Todd Haley is a demanding personality. Now, we've seen Coach Haley as the head coach in Kansas City sort of butt heads with guys. He asks a lot of his guys, if you make mistakes, if you make mental mistakes, Todd Haley is not the guy who's going to coddle you off the field and talk you through to the next one. Todd Haley is the guy who's going to mother F you and expect you to know your stuff, right? So that's good for some, not great for others. We've seen him in Pittsburgh with Ben Roethlisberger. Much of the time it was harmonious and they were successful. But sometimes tempers boiled over and there were shouting matches and there's some big egos in there. So I understand how people with Todd Haley could feel one way or the other. He's one of those he's one of those big personalities that your coordinator, you sometimes don't want that from, but he's had success, and we've seen him be successful on as a coach in this league. And some people feel more and having a head coach on a staff as a coordinator, where your head coach has never been a head coach before, could be something that helps. Right? This could be a guy that maybe Coach Glenn bounces ideas off of with a head coaching pedigree. So we'll see. Todd Haley is a name that's been thrown around. He hasn't been in the league the last couple of years. Most recently, he's been in the UFL. But interestingly enough, Todd Haley, one of his first coaching gigs was on the Jets staff as a wideout coach when Aaron Glenn played here. Now, not a lot of people would know that, but from the mid-'90s, he was a wide receiver coach on the Jets staff. So he and Aaron Glenn have a long-standing relationship. All right? Now, defense, I'm hearing a couple interesting names. Defense is the leader in the clubhouse right now seems to be another one that I have a bit of a connection to, and one that I would vouch for, that I really like a lot, who sort of got a raw deal in the NFL in his time. And that's Steve Wilks, right? Steve Wilks, my connection to Steve Wilks was I was in Carolina for a half a year, right? I stayed there the entire off season, and then right before training camp, I fractured my tibia. But I did get to see Steve Wilks the entire, 6 months, 5 months stint I was there. I saw the way he engaged with the players. I saw the way he was around the facility. I saw the support that he had in the building. And he had gone on now to be a head coach. So now Steve Wilks, obviously, if you remember, had a 1-year head coaching stint with the Cardinals, and then he was relieved of his duties. Season didn't go great, but it was very controversial when he got replaced. It did seem like he got a bit of a raw deal. It's very hard as a head coach, and it's something that we'll see here, where he didn't even have his players really in there yet, and they quit on him. So he was losing with the last coach's players, and I guess they didn't see enough from him in that head coaching role to make them believe that he was their answer for the future. But defensively, Steve Wilks has a long, successful resume, right? Another guy that potentially Aaron Glenn could bounce some questions off of and say, listen, this is my first time in the head coaching seat. You see, Steve Wilks almost could be like a mentor type coach. That's the feel I got when I was there. He was always trying to teach and help grow, whether it was players or other coaches. He just always open to suggestions, big on communication. So he's one that I think could be very, very interesting for the Jets on the defensive side of the ball. And then the one that got me, and I'm sure a lot of Jets fans super excited, was on special teams, and that's Mike Westhoff. Mike Westhoff, if you know, has a decade-long history with the Jets as their special teams coordinator. The last time they were good, Mike Westhoff was here. And he was one of the few special teams coaches that you felt like changed the game. Special teams is an often overlooked 1/3 of the game. But not when Mike Westhoff was here, man. He was faking punts, and his guys were covering kicks and covering punts like savages. So that's all attitude. That's all buy-in. To be able to command a special teams unit, a lot of guys now are going from special teams coaches to head coaches because it's the only facet of the game where you deal with both offensive and defensive players. So a lot of people, look at that special teams coach and see how they run that unit, and you can get a good feel for a guy. And a guy like Mike Westhoff was incredible at the position. Now, he retired for a while, I think some health stuff came up, and I don't know that he would be in the market now for a full-time gig again. But that's a phone call if I'm the Jets I'm making if there's any possibility he comes back. Because for the same reason, he's a guy who understands the New York landscape. He's had success in the New York media. And like I said, to the point where people would talk about your special teams coordinator, that's how good a job he did here. And that's almost like a thoughtless position a lot of times. Like you can't name too many special teams coordinators across the league. And let's say he doesn't come in. Another interesting name I've been hearing is a former player, and that's the name a name you may be familiar with if you're really plugged into the league, and that's a guy by the name of Chris Banjo. And Chris Banjo is a current special teams assistant in Denver who has a history with Coach Westhoff. So you're seeing a lot of times, obviously, we've seen it around the league where if these coaches learn under certain guys, they sort of take on the persona and take on some of the traits of the coach that's leading. And if Coach Banjo took anything from Coach Westhoff, we'll take it. That was kind of one of the reasons I was into the Brian Flores possibility, because he's been under Coach Tomlin for the last couple of years. And I'm a big believer in these coaching trees most of the time. If you get to learn under a great leader, a lot of times that rubs off and it rolls downhill and you wind up picking some of those traits up. So that's where the Jets are with special teams. So here's where we are, guys. I didn't want to stay on too long tonight, but I thought it was cool to touch base and kind of just get a feel for where we're at. I think the base, now we'll just kind of go off the cuff. I think the base, for the most part, is happy with the Aaron Glenn pick. I'm generally a hard critic of the Jets because I've had so many down years and had to really just stay loyal through all the bad times. So I tend to be pretty pessimistic when it comes to these guys. I always expect everything to turn out bad. But for whatever reason, like I said, if I have a good feel about it, and I do, getting one of our own back in the building who's seen success here, I think a lot of the Jets fan base sort of echoes that sentiment, where I think they sort of feel the same way. I'll be on over the next couple of days. We'll talk about the GM search. We'll talk about it when we find out what's up with our quarterback situation. As we start to get closer to the draft, we'll start to kind of check in more often. I do want to start to make this a thing, guys. Again, I know not a ton of us are in here, but for those of you who are, I appreciate it immensely. Please, guys, engage with me on Twitter. If you see I like to engage back, we'll talk a lot. My goal is still the same. I plan to grow this thing huge. I have a wonderful platform I'm starting outside of this. I would love to sort of together grow this thing. It's going to suck now, and that's cool. I'm comfortable with it. I look forward to the time we have, again, 6 figures or 1 million followers and come back in here and look at these first couple that were lit wrong and had very low production value, and we grew together. I want to grow a community here where we engage back and forth. It could be good. It could be bad. It could be hate. It could be love. I'm comfortable with all of it. But like I said, we'll touch predominantly on New York sports for now. But the goal is to continue to grow. And there are things I want to talk about outside of here. Eventually, I'll jump on as we grow this community. And look, I'm excited. I hope you all are too. I'll touch base with y'all again on Twitter. Thank you guys so much for the couple of you who did take the time to look in tonight. It means a ton. I won't forget that. And we'll going forward. Look, anything you guys have in the chat, please reach out. I'll try to respond to everything. Again, if you know me from Twitter, you know I'm trying to engage with you all the time. But guys, check in with my Twitter. It's man_O_Steele17. ManoSteele17 is probably where I got my biggest following and where I'm the most active. On Instagram, I am ManoSteele, MANNO Steele, like Superman. And on Minette, guys, which is a cool new app where we could talk about anything you guys want. Jump on there. I am a classified expert on there on a bunch of things. We could talk sports media if you want. We can talk NFL. We could talk NBA. We could talk MLB. We could talk about training. We could talk about coaching athletes. We could talk about recruiting. Anything that you guys sort of have an interest in. I had a really cool, strange journey that's afforded me the ability to learn to work with athletes. My road has been crazy, so I have a lot of cool stories, and I think I'm pretty relatable. So I'm sure a lot of the stuff you all have questions about are things that I've been through as an athlete and as a fan. I appreciate little Carla Perez for checking in. one of my greatest supporters. Thank you. But again, thank you all so much. Not a ton of us tonight. That's cool. It's on me for not being more consistent. You're the man, Makashita. Thank you so much. I do too. I look forward to the future too. We'll get you on and we'll all talk, man. Thank you. Keep touching base with me on Twitter. I'll get the microphone stuff fixed. Like I said, I was in Orlando playing in Nationals this weekend, so the time that I would have normally had, I don't have. So we'll make time to do that. Thank you for bearing with me through it anyway. And I hope you all have an excellent night. I'm pumped about the future. I hope you are too. Again, we'll check in soon. Man of Steel Sports Pod. Thank you guys so much and have an awesome night.